Hey y'all, I am James Wright and welcome to my shop. Tonight we're talking about saws. Which saw should you use for which application and what should you be looking for in them? There are lots of different saws out there. About half of my shop is saws, so this is going to lead to a bunch of questions. If you are new to this, we do a live every Tuesday night, and if you are watching this recorded, down in the comments down below, not in the comments, in the description down below, there's a list of all the questions that are asked during the live with timestamps beside. Those timestamps will get you roughly to where you want to be in the video. If you are watching this live, then go ahead and throw your questions into the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can tonight. Also, at the beginning of each live, I do an update of things that are going to be happening in the Wood by Wright world, so some news. And we have a few things. Number one, we are going to be doing the drawing tonight. So the ticket sales for the raffle on the Reed Plains plane is closed. So we are going to be doing that at the end of the video, and I will pick and live choose who is the winner, so stay tuned for that. Number one, March 26th. That is, wait, which one is that? Oh yeah, that's the one right here. March 26th, we have an MWTCA meet right here, just a couple miles away from me. It'll be the last one at that location because they're actually going to bulldoze it a few weeks after we're done. So yes, if you're going to be in the Rockford area March 26th or even within a few hours drive, come on out for that. I'm also going to be at the MWTCA meet in Omaha, Nebraska. And that will be on April 16th. So if you want to find out more about those, go to mwtca.org. But you do have to be a member to go to any of the MWTCA meets. It's a $25 a year membership, and it's way worth it, even if you're just purchasing tools. Plus, it comes with several other things. Next up is the National MWTCA meet is going to be in Green Bay, Wisconsin this year. So that's one of the largest tool sales in the entire world. And that will be in June 14th through the 17th. Let's see, September 1st is Handworks. If you go to one thing this year, Handworks is the thing. It will be in Iowa, little town in the middle of Iowa called Amana. And that will be September 1st and 2nd. Everyone will be there. Rex Kruger and I will actually be doing a meetup. Haven't chosen when or where, but it's 2 days where the entire town is just about antique hand tools. And it's really kind of cool. All of the modern makers are there, from the smallest guy making a few tools in his shop to Veritas and Lee Nielsen, as well as everyone in between. And there'll be antique sales, and there'll be demonstrations, and you'll be able to meet and greet all the names in hand tool woodworking. So looking forward to seeing that. And then the last one on the list right now, September. I don't have the date on there. It's towards the end. Actually, it's the last weekend in September, is the second National MWTCA meet, and that will be in Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines, Iowa.
Des Moines.
I know.
Don't. Don't.
At least it's not Des Moines, Illinois.
Oh.
So yeah, there's a lot happening in Iowa this year, and Omaha, Nebraska is right.
Well,
on
they
the
gotta
border
have
there,
something going for them.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're going to be any of those, let me know, and I'm looking forward to it. So let's actually get into the topic.
No, you need to talk about Workbench Con. I'm getting thousands of questions
Oh
about
yes,
it.
Workbench Con last week was absolutely it was awesome. Workbench Con, for those of you who don't know, isn't exactly for the average woodworker. It is a conference for social media woodworkers. People who do Instagram, Facebook, people who make content about woodworking, and so there were several hundred. I don't know. I actually didn't see a number, but if I had to guess, I'd probably say there were probably 300 to 400 there. So it was a very big event, but almost all of the YouTube names were there, and it was a lot of fun. But it was a great time to learn, to schmooze, to set up collaborations and talk shop, and it was a lot of fun. So if you were there, hi! And if you weren't there, well, then I'll see you next year. Yeah, I'm hoping I can take Sarah there next year, and the two of us might be able to do a talk. It'd be kind of fun. So, stay tuned.
I don't know why I'm making all these faces at the camera. They can't see.
Yeah, oh, sorry. For those of you who can't see Sarah today, there's a problem with her webcam. So I'm not sure why it's not working, but yeah, you can't see Sarah today.
Yeah.
So she's making faces at me all she wants without any Not like it ever stopped you.
I was going to say. So what is, okay, Dennis Miko asked, what's the Iowa town name and date for the tool meet?
For Handworks, that is September 1st and 2nd. It's in Amana, Iowa. If you go to handworks.com or just even Google Handworks, all one big word, it will pop up. It's completely free. And so you just walk in. It's the entire town devoted towards it. And there's a barn that is all the tools for sale. There's several other barns where people set up. There's some blacksmithing. There's a couple barns where there's demonstrations going on. And there's some reenactment. And it's an incredibly cool time. And most of the names you know and love from the woodworking world, Charles Schwartz, oh, come on. Total mind blank. Rex and I. Shannon Rogers, I'm hoping he'll be able to be there. Ann said she was going to be coming.
For what?
For Handworks. Oh, come on. The Woodwright Shop. Roy Underhill. Yeah, he's there. Most all hand tool woodworkers will be there. We've even tried to get Paul over here, but Paul doesn't like to do things like that. So we'll see. Hope so. Saws. So yes, how do you tell the difference? How do you choose the difference between a frame saw and a dovetail saw? Every saw is a little bit different, and why do I have so many? The reason I have so many is I need to have them so I can demonstrate and show. Do you need all of these saws? No, you do not. Most people will get by with 4 or 5, and the more you get in a hand tool, the more you have, and eventually you just start collecting it. But really, with about 6 or 7, you can do anything and do it really, really well. You can still do anything with about 4, but you start to specialize because every saw has something that they're good at. The whole jack of all trades kind of comes into this. Let me see, where is the sash saw? Here's the sash saw. Yes, saw. My wife's initials, S-A-W. This is a sash saw. It has crosscut teeth for going across the board, and it is a medium size at the back. If I only had one saw in the shop, this would be the saw. It is the one I use more than anything else. I used to say the Tennon saw, and the Tennon saw is also a crosscut with a back, but it's a little smaller. Usually a little bit smaller teeth, and so this is kind of like the jack saw. It does almost everything. Some people will say the Ryoba, which has crosscut teeth on one side and ripcut teeth on the other. These two are basically the same saw in 2 different traditions, except for this one also has ripcut teeth. So it would be basically the Tennon saw and the sash saw smashed into one. So how do you go about actually choosing which one? Because you can have one, you can have that jack of all trades, but the problem is if you have a jack of all trades, it does everything kinda, but it doesn't do anything really, really well.
You have a super chat.
I have a super chat. Oh, who did we get from? Dad Gamet?
Dad Gamet. Priming the pot for a mom joke, and also what is the date for Omaha?
Omaha is April 16th. So thank you. Do you have a mom joke ready?
I thought I did. Oh. Why is the 4th koi in every koi pond always fake?
The 4th koi in every koi. What?
Well, you've got kois A, B, C, and D koi.
Decoy. I got it. Okay.
So you said the dates for Omaha?
Yeah, Omaha is March 26th.
Okay.
Omaha, Nebraska. Yep, I'll be there. Actually, I'm going to be going out there. My youngest is going to be coming with me. We're going to
March? I thought you just said April.
April 16th. I was looking at the wrong one. April 16th for Omaha. March 26th for Rockford, Illinois. There's a bunch of them coming up. Yeah, okay, so the first thing you need to look at when you're choosing which saw to use is, are you cross-cutting or are you rip-cutting? So we have a board here. If I'm cutting this way, I'm going to cross-cut. I'm going to actually cut across the grain. If I'm cutting this way, I'm going to be ripping it. Imagine yourself grabbing the board and ripping it down. Because the grains are going this way, you could rip it down. You couldn't rip the board that way. So rip-cutting, cross-cutting. If you're going 45 degrees, your choice. Which one do you like more? Generally, I do cross-cut at 45 degrees, but the closer I get to the rip, the more I'm going to be using a rip saw. So with two formats of teeth, you then have to figure out how big a cut are you making. And the bigger your cut is, the bigger the teeth you need. If I were cross-cutting this board, I have to ask myself, am I just going to do a rough cut? Am I just going to get this close to length, within a ½ inch or so? In which case, then I'm going to grab a large panel saw, or even, here, grab this one, or even my buck saw. This thing has crosscut teeth, and it's designed for cutting logs. I'm cutting them to length. So you're bucking the log, and you do it on a saw buck, which is a device for holding it. And bucking is cutting the log into usually about 18-inch long logs that you could then split into firewood. And so if I use this, I could cross-cut the board, and it would do a very rough cut with horrible knockout on it, but it would be very, very fast. Those teeth would just fly right through that board. But if I'm doing joinery, and I'm actually going to be cutting it precisely to length, I want a cross-cut saw that's designed for being precise, in which case, most of the time, a sash saw would be what I'd be using. That's why, for most joinery, the sash saw is the one I'm going to grab, because most joinery is the cross-cut. Now, if I was working on a lot of small pieces, and I was normally working on small pieces, I might use the carcass saw, which is cross-cut teeth as well, for small, delicate things. Generally, the smaller the teeth are, the cleaner your cut is going to be. The bigger your teeth are, the more rough your cut is going to be, but the faster it's going to be. So if I were working on, let's grab this board here, 6 inches by 1.5 inches white oak, and I want to cross-cut this. I'm probably not going to do it with my sash saw. I could do it with my sash saw. It's going to take a while. Small teeth, it's going to take a while. Now, if I really want a good, clean cut, I can do that. But I'm probably going to bump up to a panel saw. Here, let's grab this one. Drop things on the floor. This is a small panel saw. This one's only about, 22 inches long. It's got crosscut teeth, and they're relatively large crosscut teeth in comparison to the sash saw. But they're much, much smaller than I would find on the buck saw. And this would be much faster for cutting through that. So again, you're just looking at the comparison of how big a tooth do you want. The bigger your tooth is, the faster you cut. The smaller your tooth is, the slower you cut. But the smaller your tooth is, the cleaner the cut. It's the same thing whether you're talking Japanese or Western saws. Japanese saws also come with backs and without backs. And generally, when they don't have a back, they have teeth on both sides. It's kind of economical and fast. But a lot of these small Dazuki, I'm probably smearing that name, have really, really small crosscut teeth. And so this is your final cut. This would be basically the Japanese version of the dovetail saw, but it has crosscut teeth because once you get down to a small size, crosscut versus rip cut really doesn't make that big a difference. And crosscut generally give you a much cleaner surface. One of the myths about Japanese saws, and it was one that I fell into early, and actually there's an early video of me spewing that myth, is that Japanese saws don't have set. They do have set. And that's why you don't want to use one of these as a flush cut saw, because the set on the teeth is actually going to cut into the surface you're working on. And set is the teeth actually stick out from the plate on both sides and will cut a larger kerf than the plate so it doesn't bind up on you. And generally for set, the bigger the teeth, the more the set. The smaller the teeth, the less the set. And it just kind of comes down to personal preference at that end. But all Japanese saws, with the exception of the flush cut saw, which my flush cut saws, oh, here we are. This is actually a Western flush cut saw. Yes, both Western and Japanese have flush cut saws, and they are saws that have the exact same teeth, but they have no set on them. So you can put them flush on the surface and cut on the surface without scratching up the surface you're cutting on. So that's basically the big spiel for this. You need to know, do you need it cross-cut? Do you need it rip-cut? And then, how big a tooth do you want? At that point, it kind of comes down to how you feel about it. The only reason for a big frame saw is because I want really, really big teeth and I want a lot of throw. I want the whole saw to be able to move a long distance. And so because of that, I need a longer frame. I couldn't put a back on this. That blade would be wobbling all over the place. I couldn't make it really thick because then I'd run into problems with it. So what I can do is I can put it in tension and can cut it down. The Japanese answered that question by just making the plate a lot thicker. So if you look at a whaleback saw, or I don't even want to pronounce that one. It's yeah, it's like a Hawaiian fish.
Hey,
Yeah,
good job.
Yes.
Tell me you watch Octonauts
yes.
without telling me you watch Octonauts.
But the other thing with Japanese saws is they tend to be much shorter. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, their most common use is to use with both hands. The nice thing about working with both hands is you have twice the force and twice the control, more stabilization. But it also means you have a shorter stroke. So that means most of your saws are a little smaller. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use it one hand. You can use it one hand, but it's just a different way of doing it. Backs. That was the other thing I was going to talk on. So then. You'll notice a lot of these have backs, and some of them do not have backs. These ones all over here do not have backs. They're still Western saws without backs, so you can cut as deep as you want. Whereas with Japanese saws with the Ryoba, there is no back on it, so you can cut down. The one problem with that is if you are still cutting deep, sometimes the teeth on the other side will end up scratching up the inside. So you'll have a really nice clean cut at the beginning, and then you'll get a rougher cut as it gets down deeper. And so it's just pros and cons to different things like that. The reason for a back on a Western saw is you want to get a thinner plate, but you can't push a thinner plate without it wanting to bind up on you. And so you put a back on there to stiffen it. With the Japanese saws, they can get a thinner plate on there because they are pulling it, keeping it in tension. The downside to that is you have to be very careful when you're learning. When you push it back through, you're still pushing it, but you want to disengage the teeth and then come back down and stroke it again. Otherwise, you're going to be wanting to cause the thinner plate to bend. Differences between Western and Japanese saw. The big difference is that when you're pulling the saw, if I'm cutting through the board, the leading tooth is actually on the back side of the board over here, and I have no control over the tooth over here. That's the first tooth going into the wood, and so I can't make that tooth move anywhere. If instead I'm pushing the saw, now the leading tooth is on my side, and I can very easily move it around. That sounds like, oh yeah, that makes Western saws great. The problem is that means that any slight movement of the saw, any movement of your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder, anything going out of line is going to make this saw go whee! And you have to have a lot of skill in order to control the saw. Whereas with a Japanese saw, if you set it up straight, because you have no control over the leading tooth, it just goes straight down the line. It doesn't matter if you're over here dancing away, the saw goes straight.
Do that again.
Now, it doesn't mean you don't have any control. You do have some control, but you have very, very little control over the other side, and you find yourself having to do a lot more twisting and turning to try and bring it back on the line. The other side of the coin is once you do master a Western saw and you understand what it has and you spend that year or more of practicing and getting the arm in alignment and really honing your skills, then you have that skill. And any slight movement to the wrist, you can guide that saw exactly where you want. It's ever so slightly starting to get off line, you give it a little tweak over the side and you bring it right back onto the line without crossing the line and going into the side. And you've got all that control, but it takes a lot of skill to learn. And that's why for beginners, the Japanese saw is the way to go, because you can just go slice down and we're good to go. And these are really, really cost effective. To get a good backsaw, I mean, a really nice backsaw is $200, $300, $400, $500. A decent good Ryoba is $30, $40. Now you can get into the really, really nice ones that are intended to be sharpened, and those will run you the same price range as a good backsaw. But in all honesty, they don't cut that much better. The downside to this is you can't sharpen this plate. Once it goes out, it's got to get sharpened, it's got to get tossed, and you get a new one. Which this one I do need to replace because I have a missing tooth on here and I've got a bend in the nose. So in which case, I just replace it. Well, actually what I do is I grab this one, which I keep this one nice and clean, and that one I bring out for show.
No, that's the one you give your wife and daughter.
Yeah. There are lots of other saws. There's coping saws. There are the, okay, I do say Western saw versus Japanese saw. And that is a little bit misconstrued because in most of the continental Europe, This is the joinery saw. So Japanese, Europe, Western, and the reason we call it a Western and not an American saw is because it was formalized in England and France. France started to give this up and go back to the bow saw, but most of Europe stuck with the bow saw. Whereas these came over to America because most of America's woodworking tradition came out of France and England. But then you get into other parts of Asia, and there are mixes of bow saws and other things that look kind of like a Japanese saw but have a bent handle, and a lot of other interesting things. So there isn't just one, silence that, there isn't just one, or there aren't just two, there's lots of others. But most people compare Western and Japanese because those are the two most common ones that you're going to come across. So I've said a lot of things. Let's me jump into questions because it looks like we've got a pile of them over there. Do this before I fix that. What do we got, babe?
Let's see. Oh, I forgot to put it down. Hopman 6 asks, Tennon saws, what maker do you like for modern saws that are reasonable, aka not veritas?
Okay, a Tennon saw has rip cut teeth, and it's usually even bigger than the sash saw, but it's not as big as the Mitre Box saw. The Mitre Box saw is much, much larger, which has crosscut teeth because it's a Mitre Box to cut across the wood. But it's long so that you can have a full stroke and the box can still hold on to the saw. Honestly, Veritas is one of the most cost-effective saws on the market new. I would not want to go any cheaper than this without the understanding that you're going to need to do some work into it. Pax and what was the other one? Spirit? No. I can't remember the other name. Someone put it in there. They do sell backsaws that are a little bit cheaper, but the handles on them are absolutely atrocious and will drive you bonkers. Here, let me show you two pack saws here. So I've got this one, three. So the pack saws come like this, and it looks fine, other than this is just made with a router. There's no comfort to this at all. It is just beefy and clunky and unbelievably annoying. But what you can do is you can shape the handle and make it something that's far more comfortable. I did a video turning this handle into this handle. And you do that and you can take a saw that's really painful to use into one that's actually really nice. And in that point, I do have to say, the most valuable thing on a Western saw is the handle. And it kind of sounds like I'm spewing something, but no, it is the handle. The one thing that makes it good is that the handle actually holds on to you. And this one's a little bit sloppy just because the space for the horns is a little larger than I would like. The good saws, if I were to take the plate off of this and just put it on my hand, the handle by itself would actually hold my hand and not come off. It fits your hand, which gives you more control, more stability, and just makes it work. The other reason why these are so expensive is you can't make a machine that will actually do this well. You have to still come in by hand and do hand shaping on it. There is no way to make a machine do this. Yeah, you can get multi-axis CNC, but they're still going to leave it rough. You still have to come in and hand clean it up with a file. And so that's why these are so expensive, is they take a lot of manpower to make a good handle that fits you. And when you buy them, you usually buy them, they come in several different sizes. So you measure your hand to make sure that your saw fits your hand. So if you're looking new, Veritas is the one that is the handle is passable. It's not amazing, and it is the bare minimum, and it just barely holds onto the hand. And so that's why it's the one that it's the cheapest one you're going to find that I considered ready to go and a decent saw. Pax and I think it's Spear and Jackson. Is that what they were saying? Lynx. Lynx is the other one. No, Spear and what's Spear and Jackson?
No idea.
Lynx. They both sell really nice back saws. The back is great. The plate is great. The teeth are fine. The handle is and if you're a beginner, you probably won't notice the difference because you have so much problem with your arm and straight, and you wouldn't be able to feel the difference. But once you get the skill down, these are just painful. having a handle that really works well is it's key. But yeah, backsaws are one of the things where you don't try and buy them antique. Antique backsaws are just as expensive, if not more expensive than you can get a veritas. So trying to find a good backsaw antique is almost impossible. So yeah, sorry. What's next?
Let's see. Any news on Eric Florip?
I have not heard from him. I actually just sent him a message earlier today, but I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything since, I'll say October last year. So yeah, I need to get in touch with him. Sorry.
Cosmin asked, have we finally figured out what the point is for the nib on some panel saws?
Yes. I need to do a whole video on that. Actually, do I have one down here? I don't have any saw down here with a nib on it. Do you? No, you don't. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to get that right now. Oh, was that a super chat?
It is.
He's got a question. Let me come back. Let me answer this one. We'll do that. So what a nib is, you'll find some saws where there's like this weird bump right here on the back of the saw. And you are going to find all sorts of reasons as why is that there? What is the use of the nib? What function does it serve? And arguments will go up one side and down the other because very few antique saw makers, actually no antique saw maker listed the reason for why it was. In all of the advertisement for saws that had nibs, you wouldn't see, hey, the nib is there for one reason or another. Some people have it there so you can actually tie a string around and put a cover on it. Some people so you can hang it on the nib. Some people say it for starting the cut. And the interesting thing is we actually know why the nib is there. But it's one of those things that we absolutely love to argue about. And so even once you know it, you still want to argue the reason for it. And the actual reason for it is the same reason why there is all this other decoration on the saw. So saws have a lot of decoration. You'll see these little points and this hook up here and these little flutes in here and the lamb's tongue and so many other, where is the, yeah, here it is. This one has a lamb's tongue in here, little notches and things that really have no functional purpose other than one thing. And that functional purpose is when you see a saw that is made like that, you know the maker knew what he was doing. Because there has to be so much handwork that goes into this that you can look at the saw, look at the handle, and know it is quality. You know that the person who did that knew what he was doing. If you look at a saw plate, at the plate, the rest of the saw, you have no idea if the person who made this plate, who hand forged this, had any idea what they were doing. So what they would do is they put decoration on the back. That would they say, yeah, see, I do know what I'm doing. I can make something detailed like this. And it is just that. It's decoration to show the person who made it knew what they were doing. So that's why when you're looking at a saw, the first thing you should look at is it straight? If it's straight, then look at the handle. If the handle has extra filigree and is shaped well and is functioning well, has two good horns, then you know it's good. The handle is what sells the saw. The rest is, yeah, it's useful, but that's what you should look at. So what's that super chat?
So you have two of them now.
Oh.
First one is Warren. How easy / difficult is it to use the Mitre Saw without the Mitre Box? Mine still has glue tape on the teeth.
Yeah, using this without the box is almost impossible. These are really, really heavy. Most of them have steel backs. They're much, much longer, and so the amount out there just makes it difficult to hold on to, and the thing is just like, it's painful. So yes, you could use it, but it's really designed to be in a Mitre Box. The Mitre Box holds the weight for you. You just provide the back and forth motion. So I have never tried to use it because it's kind of a ridiculous idea. But now that you say that, it sounds like it would make a great short. The interesting thing about Mitre Box saws is the last few inches of the teeth are never used, and the first few inches of the teeth are never used. And so if you're ever wondering if your saw is dull, you feel those teeth at the top, and then you feel the ones in the middle, and you see what's the difference between those. and that'll let you know if it's sharp. And you can do a lot the same with most regular saws, because the last few teeth down here you almost never use. I mean, it's really hard to cut anything back here. You usually stop right about there. So if you feel these last couple teeth, and then you feel the teeth in here, and you're like, oh yeah, there's a big difference. Maybe it's time to sharpen. Do you have a mom joke for him?
What does 007's doorbell sound like?
What?
Dong. Ding dong.
I was going to go something like dong, 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 dong.
Oh,
I like
dear
yours better.
Lord.
What's the other super chat?
Let's see. Aaron Fenn wants to know whether you recommend how difficult it is to make a new handle accurately.
Don't expect your first one to be absolutely amazing. If you take your time on it, it can be a very good functional handle. They are hard to make. This is probably one of the most difficult things that a regular jointer will make. It is, yeah, to make a good handle takes a lot of skill, and there's a reason why they cost so much, is they take a lot of time to make. That being said, to make one functional is really not that big a deal. It's not that hard. You just have to take it step by step and understand you're going to be putting a lot of time into your first one. There are patterns out there that you can cut on there and get you the rough shape, and then you spend the time with the file and rasp, and you do a little bit of work, you put it in your hand, and be like, no, it needs a little more work here. You do a little more work, you put it in your hand, you feel like, it needs a little more work there. You do that for a couple days, and then eventually you get to something that's like, it's actually kind of nice. And then you spend the time really detailing and getting rid of all the scratches and marks and cleaning it up. And then you feel it again, it's like, that is really nice. And then you spend some more time on it, scratching it and cleaning it and filing it and smoothing it and polishing it. And they're a lot of work. But they're not something that, once you have a few skills down and you've done a few other things, most people can do one of these. Is it going to be professional? Is it going to look like something from Jared Green? No. But is it going to look like something from me? Probably. Because mine, here, I'll show you this one. This is the one I made for myself, and it's passable. And you can still see a lot of I could probably spend a lot more time really detailing and cleaning it, but it's just the shape I want. It feels exactly the way I want it to go. But yeah, if you want to see that, I've got the video on making. I made 3 of these not too long ago, and I've made a couple others. I have probably like 4 or 5 on making plain totes. And it's the exact same thing, other than, especially if you have a closed handle, there's a lot more fiddly work to do inside. But yeah, you can do it. There's a reason why they cost that much. Got a mom joke for him?
Yeah, I'm stuck between 2 of them.
What's the first one then?
Hang on one second. Sometimes they read better if you have the print. Ready? What did Spartacus say when the lion ate his wife?
When the lion ate his wife? What?
Nothing. He was gladiator.
Yeah, I like that one.
I knew you would.
It's better than it should be.
Well, you're not Spartacus.
What's next?
I know your mind went there. Alex Adams wants to know, what makes a saw good for cutting dados, and should your saw be a certain size in relation to the size of the dado?
Dados. So a dado is a groove that goes across the wood. It's kind of like a dado. That is a dado. So right here I've got a board, and I have this really wide groove here that goes across the board. So it goes down in a little ways, and that is a dado. So a groove that goes across the board is a dado. If it goes with the grain, then it's a groove. And so what you need is, number one, you need a crosscut saw. And most of the time, my go-to is the sash saw. The sash saw is, it's a little larger, and so for most boards, it will work. And for up to, well, okay, the rule of thumb is, you never want to use a board that is more than half the thickness of the saw. So in other words, if my saw is 12 inches long, I never want to do a board that's more than 6 inches. So once I go through, I can eject the dust out of the other side and come back out. If I do a board that's longer than half the length, there will always be some teeth in the middle that keep loaded up. Now that's the rule of thumb. But the answer to it is, rather than going halfway through the board and coming back, what you do is you just go all the way out and continue until there's just a little bit of saw hanging out here. And then you come all the way back until there's just a little bit of saw hanging out there. And you make sure that you have enough blade coming out that when it goes back in, it has ejected its dust in there. The other answer is if I have crosscut things longer, wider than this saw is long. And so what I end up doing is I just go as far as I can. I just make sure I'm lifting it out and cleaning the dust off as I go. So you just have to make sure you're cleaning the dust out of the teeth. Otherwise, what happens is the dust has nowhere to go, and it starts coming up beside the plate, and that starts pushing the saw off to one side and starting to get it wandering. That is actually one of the reasons why some people have problems with big frame saws. If you're cutting and resawing a board that is, say, 12 inches thick, and you're right on your line on your side of the board, and you flip around the board and you're right on your line on the other side of the board, when you finally break it open, the inside of the blade was bellowing out. And what happened is, well, most often the problem is you're actually pushing too hard on the saw. And when you push on the saw, it puts force inside the wood, and the blade actually starts to bend inside the wood. And as it does that, it starts putting pressure on one side over the other. And when it does that, then it just starts carving out more on that side, and it's kind of an aggressive, a whole aggressive problem that starts making it curve more. The other problem is if you're doing something too big for the saw and it always has some dust in it, that will build up on the sides and start pushing the saw one way or the other. But if you do find it bellowing, number one, make sure it's tight. You got to really crank this thing down. Put a screwdriver on it and crank it. But number two, never push the saw. Let the saw do the work. Just move it back and forth and let the saw do it. Most of the time this is actually used in a push format. At least that's the way I like it because it gives me more control. Some people like to put it in a pull format, but understand if you're doing it in a pull format, the leading tooth is on the other side. So you have a little bit of an issue with that. So yeah, what's next?
Let's see. Timothy Mallon asked, when buying a decent straight-bladed saw that needs some surface cleaning and rust removal, what's the best way to do this?
Start an argument. Oh, yes. I love it when saws come out. If you take the handle off the saw, dip it in vinegar, and if you're careful with that, it works really well. Very cheap, very fast. You can clean off the excess when it comes out, and it's good to go. But then you're going to have a lot of people like, you put it in there. And yeah, as long as you're careful and you don't leave it in there too long, it's not a problem. Some people will really freak out about it and cause all sorts of issues, but if you leave it in there, yeah, it will cause problems. But if you're just in there until you've eaten into the rust, it's not an issue. The other way is you can use some sandpaper and clean it out with that. A little bit of WD-40, lubricate it in, and put some elbow grease into it. It works great. The proper way that you're going to hear on most of the forums is actually to use a scraper. So, guard scraper, and put some lubrication into that and scrape it out. And it actually works okay. A lot of people like to use Simple Green. I've never had a huge amount of luck with it, especially if the saw is fairly pitted. It just doesn't get as far into it as I want to. However, the first question you have to ask is, do you need to remove...
Excuse me, sorry.
do you need to sneeze? Do you actually need to remove all of the rust? And honestly, not really. As long as the sides of the plate are smooth, if there's a little bit of pitting in there, that's not a huge problem. Actually, this one still has a little bit in there. This one's got a few small spots. And as long as it's oiled, rust doesn't spread. It doesn't cause any more problems in the future. And I like to actually, having a little bit of pitting on the saw, I've found to actually be kind of nice because it holds onto the wax and lubricates it for you, and it's actually kind of nice. It just doesn't look very nice. Yeah, those are the most common ways. I wouldn't go into sandblasting because the steel isn't hardened. It is actually relatively soft. All saws, all of them, are made, well, not the Japanese saws because those are hardened teeth. But anything that's intended to be sharpened, they're all made out of 1095 unhardened steel. Buying a saw dependent on the steel is shmoo because they all use the exact same steel. There really isn't anything one better than the other. So that's not a huge thing. But the downside to it is that it actually does cause issue to sandblast it. I've seen a few of them where the surface actually feels like sandpaper because it's been eaten into in a weird format from sandblasting. But as long as you use something soft like walnut shells, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you're using a coarse sand, you might have issues with it. What's next?
Oh, sorry, you catch me in the yawn. Kenny-Anjanette Horn asked, how do you determine if a saw needs to be reset, and do you need to reset after every sharpening?
Thank you. That's a good question. And hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Kenny and Janet will be here in a few weeks. We'll be doing a live with them, so stay tuned.
Oh, they're coming here?
Yes. Did I tell you?
No.
Oh yeah, they're going to come here. We're going to have dinner with them, and they're going to do a live and hang out with us for a while.
Oh, well, surprises all around.
Yeah, it's on the calendar, but I don't think you looked at it. So, was it setting? Yes. I generally set every 4 to 6 times I sharpened. And again, one of the interesting things about set is the more set you have in the saw, the more control you have. So if you're cutting a bigger kerf than the plate, that means it's easier to turn, it's easier to clean out the side. And so if you have a lot of set, it gives you a lot of control. But it also means that it's very easy for this saw to go anywhere it wants. And so usually for a beginner, I like to have a lot of set in there because a lot of set means you can back up and you can clean it up and you can come back to where you were. So having a lot of set for a beginner is a good thing. And so if you are a beginner and you're still learning a saw, putting a little bit more set into it and setting it a little more often may be beneficial for you. I let mine go until there's almost no set and then I'll reset them. Which is usually 4 to 6. But that's different. The big teeth, these ones, I may only set once every 8 times. Because they're so big, I file off a lot before I get down below the set. My dovetail saws, well, dovetail saws don't have that much set to begin with, but I'm usually going to be setting them every 3 times or so. Because they're smaller teeth. It doesn't take very many passes before you ran through that tooth. So yeah. Which I think the saw needs to be sharpened again. Oh yeah, it does. Good question. What's next?
Sumi asked, when sharpening a crosscut saw, how to know how much fleam to put on it?
Oh, cool. Fleam is the amount of angle you put on the saw when you're filing. So, let me bring this up. So, when you're filing, the file goes across it. Fleam is when you rotate it like this, and that's what makes a crosscut saw a crosscut saw. A rip cut, the file goes straight across. If you put any amount of fleam in it, you rotate it any amount, it becomes a crosscut saw. Now that being said, there is such a thing as a hybrid saw, which is 10 degrees of fleam. It's just a little bit. And it does do well at cross cutting, it does do well at rip cutting, but anytime you do all things okay, you do none of them really well. So if you only have to have one saw, hybrid is good. But if you can have 2 saws, hybrid is worthless. At least that's my take on it. But how much fleam do you put in there? Generally 30 degrees on all crosscuts. Unless you're doing something like Japanese or you're wanting something very specific. Almost all crosscut saws, 30 degrees is what you want. You will find some people who espouse that you've got to use this precise angle for this saw and this precise angle for this saw, and I have not found a big benefit one way or the other. Unless you really get into it and you really know what you're doing to begin with, it's not going to make any difference. So 30 degrees on a crosscut saw is where I put it. My rip cuts or straight across, crosscuts, 30 degrees. So easy answer. What's next?
This is a new person asking a question, at least not, I don't remember asking before.
Oh.
Michael Wiczer? Anyways, is it useful for saw teeth to be uniformly, I'm not saying it well, uniformly spaced? Or is some randomness in the pitch helpful to reduce chatter similar to a hand-cut rasp?
You know, yes and no. Machine cut teeth, I have found to be a little bit vibratory. However, it is very rare that I ever touch a saw that has machine cut teeth. Because what happens is, from a good manufacturer, the teeth are all going to be machine cut. And then he's going to come through and he's going to actually sharpen them. And so that's actually done with a file. And even with a file machine, there are slight waverances, ever so slight, just not enough that you would notice it. But there's enough that it actually breaks up that vibration. And so if you have a saw that comes straight off of the punch, yeah, it's going to vibrate. But almost all saws get actually filed down, and there are slight changes in it. But as to spacing them out, that's what's called calves and cows. You have a big tooth and a little tooth, and a big tooth and a little tooth. As long as the points are all the same height, it generally doesn't cause a problem, except for you're going to have small gullets where they all load up. And so a little bit of variance isn't going to be a huge deal, but it's not going to be a huge benefit either. A lot of variance is a big deal and can cause a lot of problems. So yeah, no, it really won't help to space them out, but if there's a slight variance, it's really not going to cause an issue. What? You got that look.
Think of a joke when you said calves and
Calves
cows.
and cows.
And then I'm like, is that why it's wood movement? I did not sleep enough.
You did not. But you're cute.
Anyways. And there's going to be just this random voice when people replay this video.
Well, we've got enough time for a couple more.
We are
and we're
not
going
to get through all these questions at all.
I think we've just gotten to the ones we were asked a question before the live went live.
I think so. Way to get ahead
So unless
of the
you throw a
curve.
super chat up, we're probably not going to get to your question. Well, why don't you pick a good one then? Or a couple of them. Or you can just ask the next on the list.
No, well, yeah, this one I can skip for now. Sorry. Some are more. I know you talked about, like, best bang for your buck, but how about if you're just brand new and you're looking for a cheap saw?
If you're brand new, you don't have any skills, you're looking for something cheap and to get out of the box, getting a good Ryoba is the way to go. And I really like, which one is these? Come on, what's the name of it? I was hoping it'd be on there. It's not. Suizan. They're just a general good saw.
Is that the one that's Suizan?
Yeah. And I talked with the guys there this week, and I can't remember how to pronounce. But I mean, it's honestly, you can get them on Amazon for $30 or so. Actually, I don't know what the price is now. They've probably gone up in recent years. But to just get you started, that will do a lot of it because it comes with a crosscut teeth and it comes with a rip cut, and so you can do both of them. Over time, you'll find that you might want a little more control, or you may find out that you like Japanese style woodworking and you stick with them and you get some other Japanese style saws. But to just get going and be affordable and for the beginner to do, this is what you want. Now you make sure you set it up straight, because if you set it off to the angle, it's going to follow that angle. So that's really a good beginner way to go. If you're looking to step up, I really like Veritas saws. They are just a good go-to saw. They're not amazing, they're not great, the handles aren't wahoo, but for the price they really can't be beat. If you want to put a little bit of work into it, Pax and Link saws are really, really good saws, but the handles need work. And if you're beginning, you're probably not going to have a problem with it, but once you get into it and you know what the difference in feel is, you're going to run into that issue. So that's usually my list. And usually once you get to that point and you've had a collection of saws, you know what you like, and then you're like, yeah, I want to splurge and buy a Jared Green saw from File and Hammer. Or Bearcat.
Keep it G.
What's that?
Keep it G there over there,
Sorry.
sir.
Yeah, Bearcat, I think he is actually making a few new ones now.
Is he doing it again?
So stay tuned. I'm hoping to see him at Handworks. We'll see if he can make it. He's gonna try, but we'll see. What's next?
Blayne asked, any reason I couldn't turn an old Disston backsaw crosscut into a rip cut saw?
Generally, no. All you have to do is, rather than filing at 30 degrees, you turn it 90 degrees to the plate, and you file there. With crosscut teeth, generally there isn't much rake on it. In other words, the teeth aren't pointing forward, being more aggressive. Most of the time they're pointing just almost off of straight up, or some of them will actually just be pointing perfectly straight up. So that means you're going to have to introduce a little bit of rake into it as well. But yeah, you can turn a crosscut into a rip cut. Now just make sure your teeth aren't hardened. If you get hardened teeth, all you're going to do is destroy your file. So don't expect to go get a saw from the big box store and turn it into a crosscut saw. They all have hardened teeth. You're not going to find a decent saw at the big box store. They don't exist. Even their plastic handled Japanese saws are trash. Yeah, do not buy a handsaw at the big box store. Unless you just want something for breaking down lumber, and I do have actually a couple of plastic handle big box saws I use for just dumb cuts where I just need, and I don't care about the cut. They're fast, they're efficient, and when they're dull, I throw them out and I get a new one. So, yeah. What's next?
Let's see. Alex wants to know, when would you use a flush trim saw versus a plane?
Yeah, that's so let's say I have a dowel sticking up out of a board and I want to cut it off. Usually the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to come in with my decent crosscut saw that's a little faster. I'm going to cut it off 1/8 inch above the top. And then I'm going to come in with a chisel and I'm just going to slice it down until I'm really close to the edge, and then I'm just going to do one pass of the plane. Usually I leave the full surface needs another couple passes or two, and I do that all at one time just to clean it all off. I don't use flush cut saws that much. Every now and then they come into use, but it's pretty rare that I actually use a flush cut saw. You're never going to get a cut with a flush cut saw that is as clean and as smooth as you are with going to do a planing. And even if I were to use a flush cut saw, I would probably still come through with the plane and pass it down. So yeah. I find the only reason, normally, let me back up into this, normally my go-to is to eliminate as many steps as possible, in which case the fewest amount of steps would be a flush cut saw and a plane. The reason why I would go with a regular saw and then chisel and then the plane is that the regular saw is significantly faster than any flush cut saw. A flush cut saw just, they're by nature a little bit slower. A huge amount, no, but just a little bit slower. So that's what I would do.
Be careful how much pressure you put on them.
What's that?
Flush cut saws. I bent that one.
Oh yeah, they're really, really thin plates. They're intended to be bent.
Yeah.
So what you can do is actually push them flat onto the surface and cut that way.
Oh no, but yeah.
What?
Never mind. You don't remember. It's okay.
Oh yeah, that one. Yes, I remember that one. Certain experiences that my wife made, and I will not repeat them.
Haha, haha. It just means I have mine and you have mine.
Yes. Let's do one more, and then we'll do the drawing.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Let me find a good one.
Ooh, a good one. Don't do that bad one.
How about, does the type of wax used on the saw plate matter or work better between different saw types?
Not really. I use the same thing for all mine. I use my hard wax, which you can buy on woodbyright.com. Not this block. I've been working on this block for like 6 years now, and it lasts a long, long time. And it's 2 parts beeswax. Yeah, 2 parts. Yeah, this one's 2 parts beeswax, 1 part raw linseed oil. And having that little bit of oil in there just adds that lubrication on there. I love using just a simple wax on there, but any wax will do. Usually oil makes it run a little bit smoother, but oil doesn't last as long. Wax doesn't run quite as smooth, but it lasts a lot longer. And so you're kind of mixing the two together to find that butter zone where it's just where you want it to be. But it really doesn't matter, and I use the same thing on all the saws. I only use them if they really get tight, which is most often the Tennon saw. Tennon saws cause you a lot of problems. That's the one that will bind the most, but sometimes the panel saws And if I'm doing a deep cut with a Japanese saw, I'll wax that up. But most of the time I don't wax them that much.
I just realized you made a cover for your little
Yes,
switch.
because the lights like to strobe.
It took me
I think this is actually
live to
Saturday's video.
realize it.
I've had it there for almost a month now.
Have you really?
Yeah. So let's do a drawing. And
Yes.
we are going to, if you didn't see, last week we had reed planes on here. And let me get these out of here. So we've got the box and the one-of-a-kind,
focus
the
the
one and
camera.
only, out-of-focus reed block plane. This is a chariot block plane. Bum, 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 bum.
You stole my idea.
So this is over 30 years in the making. He started it back when he used to make planes and just recently finished it. So really kind of cool. Will come with a box and everything. And so we had a bunch of people, where did I put my phone? Buy the raffle tickets, and the raffle tickets are going to be going towards getting the reed planes up and going again. So let me make sure I've got this on here right. There we go. So we need to ask the Google, pick a random number between 1 and 385. Is it going to do it?
We have
It's
a super
thinking.
chat, by the way.
We do.
We do.
And Google is still thinking. Why is Google still thinking?
No say.
Hello? Pick a random number between 1 and 385. I tested it this afternoon. It went perfectly well. Okay, let's try the house speaker, see if that's actually working. If you have a house speaker, I'm sorry. Okay, Google, pick a number between 1 and 385. Is it thinking?
It's thinking. 148.
148. Let's see who is number 148. 148 is Tom Ingle. Tom Ingle. Hey, Tom.
Angle. I see on
Good to have you on here. Send me an email. I will actually probably send you an email, and we will get this in the mail to you. So congratulations. We have one more super chat.
We did.
What do we got?
Dad Gamet says, I did not buy a ticket, but since I want another mom joke, I believe I should win the plane. Oh, you know, I maxed out what I had ready for jokes, so of course.
I heard one just before. I was like, oh, I got to remember that one. And now I can't remember it. That's bugging me. I said it was a really good one.
Don't
too.
you hate that? You're like, I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah, I should.
No. No.
Here, you want me to pull one out?
Sure.
What?
My husband tells me I have two major faults. I don't listen and something else.
True that.
It's actually supposed to say my wife, but you know.
Cool. Well, if any of you are going to be at the upcoming meets, let me know. Those, again, are March 26th in Rockford, Illinois, is an MWTCA meet. April 16th, Omaha, Nebraska. I'll be there. June 14th through the 17th in Green Bay. September 1st and 2nd will be Handworks in Amana, Iowa. And then September, last week in September will be Des Moines, Iowa. And that will be MWTCA National Meet. So looking forward to seeing you all there. I think I'll do it for now. Until next time, have a wonderful day.